Guys, I gotta be real. Moana 2 feels like it was made to go straight to DVD, and I say that in the most offensive way possible. And I'm not here to say it was like the most abhorrent thing ever, because it wasn't. It does a suitable job of being a lackluster sequel. Something that really struck me about it was that the music was not on par to the first film, which has some of the greatest songs in Disney animated history. Of course, this is all probably subject to Lin-Manuel not coming back for this one. I remember when I first heard he wasn't coming back, I thought to myself, well, it's Disney, I assumed they could get like a pair of writers who will be able to write some catchy tunes for this movie, but no, they didn't, they just failed. Once again, the amazing thing about the film is that it's not abhorrent. The soundtrack is probably like the most whatever thing I've ever listened to. Nothing that really stands out to you as a listener, and I think that's what makes this way more disappointing. I remember watching the first Moana, which had so many standout tracks, like You're Welcome, which, may I also say, had a fantastic sequence, and thinking to myself that this movie was special. A song like Shiny was amazing, not only because of its David Bowie inspiration, but it was also special because, on the way back home from the theater, you were humming that song, because it left a lasting impact. Moana 2's soundtrack feels very sterile, and I believe there's a clear reason for this.
Finally, we're back to who we're meant to be.
I think Disney could still successfully write really catchy tunes. I mean, just look at Encanto, which, lo and behold, has Lin-Manuel at the helm. And I'm not trying to say that Lin-Manuel is the reason for Disney's success in its soundtracks. Just look at the many Disney musicals that came before him. But I am saying that the issue does come at the root of the problem of this movie: how it was crafted. The first Moana stands as one of Disney's most triumphant cinematic endeavors, a shining jewel in the studio's storied history. The 2016 film marked the most recent collaboration between John Musker and Ron Clements, two Disney legends whose earlier works include The Little Mermaid in 1989, Hercules in 1997, and The Princess and the Frog in 2009, which, as I was saying before, offered amazing soundtracks. Despite their impressive filmography, I firmly believe that Moana represents a certain pinnacle in their careers. Taking over the reins from Disney legends Ron Clements and John Musker is no small task, but Moana 2 brings in a trio of fresh talent: David G. Derrick Jr., Jason Hand, and Dana Miller. While none of them have directed a feature film before, at least two bring relevant experience. Hand's contributions to Encanto's story are particularly notable, and Miller's involvement in scripting the upcoming live-action Moana remake, scheduled for 2026, suggests a deep familiarity with the franchise. Still, this is uncharted territory for all three. The trio faced a daunting challenge. This sequel was originally conceived as a television series. That's one of our main issues right here, which explains a lot about this movie's structure. The overstuffed cast, coupled with pacing issues, feels like the remnants of a serialized narrative, compressed into a feature-length runtime. Nowhere is this more apparent than with Matangi, whose true nature is revealed far too early to carry the weight the story demands. What could have been a slow burn twist instead comes off as rushed, undercutting its potential impact. The new supporting cast compounds this issue. Each new character brings distinct skills and quirks, but they're given very little to do. Moni gets the most screen time, though ironically, he's the least interesting of the trio. Leto's structural expertise and Ko's agricultural knowledge are barely explored, making them feel more like placeholders for what could have been fully realized arcs in the originally planned series format. The television origins of Moana 2 are glaringly evident in its animation, which looks noticeably worse than the 2016 original. While the sequel had a budget of $150 million, slightly less than the first film, the visual decline is hard to ignore, particularly when it comes to the water effects, a hallmark of the original's visual splendor. Granted, $150 million should have been enough to deliver a visually stunning sequel, but it lacks. To be clear, Moana 2 doesn't look outright bad, but it's undeniably a step down from the technical masterpiece that was the first film. The water, which felt alive and dynamic in the original, now lacks its former sense of depth and vibrancy. This decline is disappointing for a sequel to one of Disney's most visually groundbreaking movies. The decision to pivot from a television series to a theatrical release seems to have stretched resources in ways the production couldn't fully recover from, leaving Moana 2 visually underwhelming in comparison to both its predecessor and other animated films released this year. The most devastating blow to Moana 2 undoubtedly came from Lin-Manuel Miranda's decision to prioritize Mufasa, the Lion King, over this movie. His absence is painfully evident in the soundtrack, which lacks the spark and narrative precision that made the original film's music so iconic. Two veterans of the original film do come back, handling much of the composition and lyric-free scoring, but the lyrical duties are handed off to new people, and to put it kindly, none of these replacements managed to fill Miranda's shoes. The soundtrack as a whole struggles to find its footing. Outside of what could be better than this, which benefits from lively on-screen choreography and a playful energy, most of the songs land somewhere between forgettable and outright disappointing. The low point, unfortunately, is Maui's new solo, Can I Get a Chee-Hoo, which pales in comparison to You're Welcome. While Dwayne Johnson's performance surprisingly gives the track, at least a little life, it lacks the cleverness, charm, and narrative relevance of its predecessor. It's just like a dumbed down, worse version of You're Welcome, and it's kind of embarrassing. The absence of Lin-Manuel's signature lyrical wit and ability to seamlessly integrate character development into his songs leaves the musical elements feeling disjointed and uninspired. In the original, every song served a purpose in advancing the story or deepening the emotional resonance, and here they feel like placeholders for moments that could have been much more richer. It really all is really just like an entire mess. The future of Moana as a franchise seems just as muddled as the pacing of Moana 2. First, there is a live-action remake of the original Moana, slated for July of 2026, and this remake already has Dwayne Johnson reprising his role as Maui, with some other actress stepping in as Moana. While it's clear Disney is banking on the franchise's enduring appeal, the overlap between the animated sequels and the live-action adaptations raises some serious logistical and creative concerns. And a big telling of this is the soundtrack. You could even label the soundtrack of the previous Disney film, Wish, as also another trouble of, where is the creativity going? Oh, and you bet that new live-action Moana is going to have, new songs? And if we take examples like Little Mermaid, I'm talking about the Little Mermaid live-action remake as an example, then we're in for a world of hurt. One of the worst songs I ever heard in 2023 was from that movie. It was called The Scuttlebutt. It has the rapper Aquafina in it, and oh my god, it's absolutely horrendous.
Swamp! Remember my song in the swamp when I was like, whap, chicka, whap, whap, chicka, whap.
I'm just trying to think, when was the last time I truly enjoyed a Disney soundtrack? There's Moana in 2016, that was based. There's Encanto in 2021, that was based. Oh, and guess what? It was all made by Lin-Manuel. Do you think I enjoyed the Wish soundtrack? No, it sucked. Oh, how about the Frozen 2 soundtrack? It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't, amazing to me. It was funny that Weezer made music for it, though. Which, as we all know, is the basic general rule of thumb when it comes to music. It's crazy to say that the last time I've enjoyed a musical from Disney that didn't involve Lin-Manuel was in 2013 with the first Frozen, nearly 12 years ago. What's the next upcoming Disney musical? The live-action Snow White movie? Yeah, I'm sure that's definitely gonna have a lot of stellar songs from there. I will admit, though, that the image of all the dwarves is, just super funny to me, and I can't explain why. You wanna know what the absolute irony about all of this is? But that new Lion King movie is going to have Lin-Manuel writing the soundtrack and producing the soundtrack, and I'm willing to bet it's probably gonna sound pretty good. Will that make the movie good? No, it's probably going to be absolute garbage. I'm Zeep, I love you all, subscribe, and Disney music sucks now.